below the range of metal detectors.
After you collect all this data and if you have it stored on the hard drive and stuff, what is the next step?
When you do the scan, you end up with two files. You take and you intertwine those files to make the 3D cube.
The ground-penetrating radar scans each area twice, each time from a slightly different angle. The computer program then merges the two slightly different images into a three-dimensional representation of what lies below the surface of the ground. As Rob continues mapping what lies below the Earth's surface, the team gathers pieces of the B-25. Coming up, science answers some questions and raises many more.
The mystery still lingers.
And the team discovers that not all the evidence is buried. Some of it is alive.
Barry?
The team from UFO magazine combs a supposed UFO-related crash site outside Kelso, Washington. They have set up a search grid and scanned with ground-penetrating radar.
Since we can't really dig underground, we could actually take almost like an X-ray picture of it.
The images from the radar were inconclusive due to the amount of overgrown vegetation and the uneven nature of the terrain.
So the data we're getting from the GPR, the ground-penetrating radar, this device really shows us inconclusive data. In fact, the ground, the terrain, it's really difficult for us to physically move the device. And on top of that, the ground is oversaturated with water. It really doesn't provide us with the right amount of data that we need. By all means, it's inconclusive.
The team continues its area search and gets a visitor.
Hello? Hey, are you Pat?
Barry Fisher is the grandnephew of Air Corps pilot Frank Brown, one of the pilots killed during the B-25 crash.
So good to finally meet you. Thank you so much.
Hey, nice to meet you. And hey, I brought you a couple of the copies that we spoke about on the phone.
Oh, fantastic.
Some of the pictures
Wow.
You can kind of see here.
So this is your uncle?
This is my great-uncle.
Great-uncle?
Frank Brown.
During his research of the incident, he made an intriguing discovery.
Now, what's this little article here?
Well, and this is something that I just came by in the last couple of days, and I'm not sure where it came from, but it has his military ID up here. Now, the strange thing about it was, even though he assumed the title of second lieutenant as an intelligence officer, he was in reality a counter-espionage agent.
Interesting.
Barry then says something even more surprising.
After his body was recovered, they gave his personal identification, his military ID, to somebody named Kenneth Arnold. You would think that that would go back to either the military or the next of kin.
Kenneth Arnold was one of the first guys to spot UFOs over Mount Rainier, but I don't understand why he would be given the dog tags.
Harold Dahl witnessed the Maury Island discs on June 21st, 1947. Only 3 days later, on June 24th, flying discs are seen again only 50 miles away, this time by Kenneth Arnold. His report of 9 shiny disc-shaped UFOs flying near Mount Rainier electrified the country. His story appeared in newspapers all over the U.S., making him the world's unofficial expert on UFOs. 2 weeks later, on July 7, 1947, a flying disc reportedly crashed outside Roswell, New Mexico. Is it possible that all 3 of these events are somehow related? Meanwhile, Harold Dahl remained silent about what he had seen. When he finally decided to go public, Kenneth Arnold was asked to meet with him to compare their sightings. After speaking with Dahl, Arnold believed his sighting was real and could possibly have national security consequences. Arnold contacted military intelligence, who came to Maury Island and took the UFO material.
What was the deal with Kenneth Arnold anyway? Why was he being asked to investigate UFO sightings?
After Kenneth Arnold's sighting, the entire country went UFO crazy. A week later, the Army released the story of the crash of a flying disc and its retrieval outside of Roswell, New Mexico. So the Army validated Kenneth Arnold. But because Kenneth Arnold was already the premier UFO sighter in the country, that's why he would do the investigation.
After the death of pilot Lieutenant Brown, his military identification was given to Arnold.
The more we find out about the relationship between the Kelso case and the Maury Island case, the more we have to ask, why would the Air Force send 2 counterintelligence officers up to investigate this entire case, and why would they bring this slag material back?
Under mounting pressure, Harold Dahl recanted his testimony to the FBI on August 7, 1947. However, until his death, Dahl continued to believe the sighting was real.
There has not been a whole lot of resolution, which has kind of left a bit of a hole in the family, you know, so hopefully we can get a little bit of closure out of what you guys are doing out here.
This doesn't just exist in cyberspace or in some UFO book. This is a real event. And regardless of what Harold Dahl saw, he reported a UFO, and it resulted in a very tragic event.
Whether or not there are slag, it's a good question. In lab, I do expect that we'll find some sort of reaction with the soil, with the organic environment around here.
A link has yet to be established between the material we found on the beach at Maury Island and the material that we've already collected here at Kelso. That physical link can only be established through laboratory testing.
Coming up, the evidence is put to the test. Is the idea of a plane being brought down by a UFO preposterous? Or is it possible that a piece of UFO debris could really burn through an airplane fuselage?
Stand by.
The team's experiment shows it could. In October 2007, with evidence in hand, the team arrives in Los Angeles at the lab of Dr. Sam Iyengar, a research scientist who will use state-of-the-art analytical equipment in an attempt to define the cause of the B-25 crash.
We're here amidst the majestic hills of Orange County at Dr. Sam's lab. We brought a lot of material back from Kelso for Dr. Sam to analyze. We brought back soil samples to see if there is any anomalous material in the soil. We also brought back the rubber gasket from the fuel tank of that B-25. We want to see if a mechanical failure, specifically the electrical fire that one of the tech sergeants talked about, caused the gas tank explosion that brought the B-25 down.
The team is rejoined by MIT scientist Dr. Ted Ackworth, who has just completed testing on the reported UFO debris sample from Maury Island.
Pat dove in Maury Island, Washington State, and most of the rock that he found was rock like this, which is sedimentary rock, very common in that area. He actually found something a little more interesting, which I can imagine he'd be pretty excited about. This sample here, it's actually very light. It's obviously very different from the rock that you see all around that area, color and weight. You see these bubbles or vesicular texture, which is consistent with what you might see with a metal that had been overheated and aerated. So it's something that could look like this slag, some sort of metal that was heated and turned to liquid and fell out of this UFO. What it actually is, though, is igneous rock. It's rock that was formed by volcanic activity and bringing igneous rock up towards the surface from the mantle. I don't believe that it's alien slag, but I could see how Pat may have suspected it could have been.